Good morning. Well, now you know what? I love this. It's 31st of Jan. And normally when we do a StreamYard like this, we have a bit of a countdown. But today it doesn't look like we have a countdown, and I've got straight to live. So it's a good thing I wasn't doing anything funky there, I have to say. I am going to get this in the last time just because I can and say Happy New Year. I feel like everyone's still a bit of a high. It's a really friendly way to say hello. And once you lose the ability to say Happy New Year, I feel like it's just the downward slide. Oh, I'm only joking. But anyway, great to have you guys on board. I think, employee retention starting the year, how do we keep the good people in our business is on top of everybody's mind right now. So we've got 5 strategies today on how we can keep our employees happy and hopefully productive. We normally have 3, so bear with me. What that means is that if you post questions in the chat, Chelsea the lovely Chelsea, you can't see, but we know she's the mastermind behind all of this, will share them with me at the end, because normally we have 3. As I said, we've got 5 examples today, so quite a lot to get through. So we are going to actually be covering top KPIs in employee retention backed by data. So you can go back to the business and hopefully be able to use some of these KPIs that other organizations have put in place if they work for you. Then we're going to look at 5 ways that you can influence employee retention, regardless of if you're in employer brand, talent acquisition, attraction, HR, or employee experience, because it's everybody. So it's about influencing it. Everybody has their role, and those of you that know me will recognize how strongly I feel about that. And then we've got the good news is we've got lots and lots of examples, strategy guides, and resources that then you can take away for your team and use what best works for you guys. So if you remember last year, we put together a KPI guide. It was 8 months worth of research, 549, and I still say not 550, but 549 data points from organizations of like 65,000 plus in employee size. Doesn't mean it's not applicable if you're smaller, of course, but it means a lot of effort has gone into this. So in our last LinkedIn Live, we dove into the top 2 KPIs, which is around talent brand and career site traffic. But today I really want to talk about what we're seeing in the employee retention space, because I think it's super topical. And also, I think, even bear in mind we did this last year, I think showed the shift in retention to attraction. In the last few years, have seen such a focus on talent acquisition, especially for employer brand and TA. I think seeing retention so high in terms of KPIs, it shows the really different environment we're living in right now. I think a lot of companies are right sizing. They're doing, whether they're going agile, reorgs, relooking at their infrastructure. It leaves us in this position of sadly having to make a lot of our employees redundant while also trying to retain and hire new pools of talent. So I think the focus on retention and acquisition makes sense here, not just for EB, but TA leaders both, I think, as roles evolve. With TA really, and working closely with employer brand, really encompassing modes such as the buy, build, borrow, which we've seen for a long time, but also that bot or automation side of things. And we're certainly having a lot of conversations with organizations around that automation piece. There's a lot here. Don't stress. We're going to send you a full copy of the guide that has a breakdown of all of these trends post-event. So you don't need to scrabble to try and kind of just write down things that are really important to you, and we'll send you the rest. Excuse me. If we just quickly pause from those survey responses and look at some of those KPIs specifically for retention, I'm not going to deep dive into this. But certainly from our perspective, one of the things we're seeing is how can organizations really increase engagement on internal comms channel. especially with a lot of the remote and hybrid workforce. We have a lot of, I talked about this a while ago, but even brand fatigue or noise fatigue. We live in a really noisy world. I don't know about you guys, but WhatsApp, Slack, Teams, emails. So a lot of orgs are trying to think, okay, how can we actually use these channels thoughtfully, which is actually one of my New resolutions, to be more thoughtful this year. But take some of these back, look at things like, another thing we're seeing is the employee advocacy program. How can we maximize? How can we help people be thoughtful, be advocates that makes them actually feel engaged with the organization, not just doing it for attraction yet, but also doing it to make them feel engaged and connected with an organization's vision and mission, and making themselves build up their own brand. So take these away, have a look and see what works for you. If you want to deep dive into any of these, please ping me in the chat or the comments. I think it's worth understanding when you're looking at retention that you're always going to have kind of the quick wins versus longer term strategy. And again, as I said, you can plug into a strategy guide that we'll send out after this. But I think you need to look at what can you actually impact in your role. So what needs to be improved within the organization that either you can impact or that you need to work with your stakeholders, for example, because you can't control that. And what maybe needs open, honest communication, especially in changing times. And if you're making redundancies, for example, how can you have open communication? How can you alleviate the uncertainty that I know a lot of organizations are going through right now? So, for example, if you're in an employer brand role, you absolutely, in terms of looking at high retention rate, you cannot control the preservation of the company culture alone, but you can work with your stakeholders to say, okay, what do we need to do? Start with leadership, look at the employee experience, etc. Find your culture champions within the organization. That will all lead to a stronger employer brand internally, for example. And if you're looking at talent acquisition, do you work and looking, starting to see what skills you've got internally? Look at your workforce plan and think, who do we want to focus on, perhaps from advocacy, to keep them engaged right at the beginning. So narrow your focus within your role and think about what can you impact. So what can you change, or who do you work with? And interestingly, there was a post on Facebook, I'm not sure who saw it, I just commented pre to this, which was that employer brand cannot impact retention. And my point was, of course, not alone employer brand practitioners cannot impact retention, as an example. But if part of that brand is working with the P&C director, or working with the employee experience team, for example, and making sure that the contents of that employer brand package actually would have a focus on retention, then yes, employer brand can have an impact, but not by itself. So do not try, any of you, to carry this on your shoulders alone. What you need is to get your stakeholders together on the same page and understand and agree this is something you are focusing on. So hopefully that strategy guide, based on months of research, polls and data collection, take it back, peruse it, go through it, brainstorm, think, okay, what can we impact in the shorter term? And what's the longer term strategy? What initiatives are going to take 6 to 12 months? What can we do now? The guide includes loads of research, like mind maps, as you can see here, an example, statistics, research, tips for getting stakeholder buy-in, and actual concrete steps to improving your retention rate. Obviously, no promises. We all know that if the culture's not right, you're not going to get there, but we're going to look at that. We're actually going to be looking to culture and 4 of these key methods for improving retention rate today. So 5 top ways you can influence retention in 2024. Again, it's influence. It's not manage or impact, because I genuinely don't believe it's not just one person that should own retention. This is, as I've always said, employer brand is a teamwork, employee retention, employee experience. All of this is a teamwork from leadership and people and you guys within these roles. So number 1, onboarding. I'm going to say that this is a bit of food for thought, this one. Unless you're in an HR-focused role, do you often fall into the trap about thinking about onboarding as just the first 3 months? And stop from it. No, you might say it's, we do longer, but think about it. The actual initiatives that you put in place, do you just think about the first 3 months? What about 6 months or 12 months? And the talent journey across that time period. The reason I say that, people say that somebody will leave if they have negative experience within the first 3 months. We can't forget about that first year of engagement, because a really comprehensive onboarding process can set the tone for employees' tenures. So we know that organisations with a strong onboarding process improve new hire retention by 82% and productivity by over 70%. Plus, if your onboarding plan is successful, it really helps integrate people smoothly in your team, your company, your culture, so that they feel equipped, motivated, empowered to really add value in their new role. And it's been shown to increase commitment by up to 18x and job satisfaction by up to 30x. So if that wasn't enough to highlight the importance of creating a good onboarding experience back to your teams, then the fact that new hires are twice as likely to seek new opportunities soon after starting if they have a poor experience might sway this priority. But the difficult question is where to start. What can you do to influence this process? So my recommendation is start with understanding the effectiveness of your current program, because, and I don't know where you guys are with this. Our research has told us that 55% of companies aren't measuring this, and it's really difficult to understand what's working like without baseline data. So once you have that baseline created, set onboarding goals and milestones for your new starters. Although 60% of companies don't do this currently, employee performance goals play a pivotal role in employee retention by providing a framework for motivation, engagement, and development. You've got to set clear expectations, build a culture of recognition, and align goals to create a high-performing, engaged workforce. And I know that can be really hard to do in this current environment. Right now, companies are not born equal. However, there are things we can do to impact it. So let's look at onboarding and some of the tactics you can implement, at least at a baseline level. So what does a new employee want? They want to be recognized. What can I do next? What can I aspire to? Right from their day one. That's when they're most motivated, from day one. But they have many touch points onboarding has many touch points over the first 3 to 12 months. And these are an important part of ensuring the engagement and commitment of your new hires. So although every company's onboarding will look different, I think you can start by mapping out your employees' onboarding journey and all the potential touch points that you can positively impact. So we've put together a potential journey for you with example touch points from some of our community by welcoming, easy for you to say, on the first day, to sharing advice from their team to support them settling in, all the way through to successfully completing their onboarding. That's a year. They have successfully completed their onboarding when they can celebrate, and they're happy to celebrate their first year anniversary. That's a pretty good measure of success. So once you've established your personalized journey, it's then next time to embed the moments that matter into your culture. And some of you might know we have that Moments That Matter guide. Hit us up if you want a copy, if you've lost it, if you need another one. You can do this by creating content and experiences at each of these points. And it's an added bonus if you encourage your employees to share their experience by some kind of formal or informal advocacy program. We've put together some real examples of how you can celebrate and leverage some of those moments here, from first day welcomes to checking in and building up their professional development. And I think Chelsea, maybe we could just show an example. Obviously, we can only show external ones, but if perhaps we can just share what one of these look like. Yeah, I love this. Leadership, women tech, leadership, learning, proclaiming your voice, they can be really powerful. Building advocacy like this can be used internally as well as externally. And that goes to the point about good stories, engaged employees, work, both sides of the picture. If you want more examples, again, hit me up after the session. So if we're looking then at company culture, moving on from onboarding, company culture, it's not just a buzzword. I don't know how many times people says, yeah, culture, whatever, yep, we're going to build one, but organizations don't really invest in it. It's not just a sentence you write in your employee handbook. It's how your team behaves when nobody's looking, behind closed doors, to each other, to their peers. At the end of the day, your strategy might be perfect, but without the right culture, you're dead in the water, right? And Chelsea and I argued if that was a bit harsh, but I said it's not too harsh. Company culture needs to start at the attraction stage to get people into your organization, and it should not pause, as it's another way, really important way to nurture employee engagement and retention. A positive and engaging company culture really fosters a sense of belonging, purpose, and fulfillment amongst employees, which leads to increased productivity, lower turnover, and higher levels of job satisfaction. In fact, we have some research from MIT that shows that the number one driver of attrition was a toxic culture, causing 1 in 5 employees to leave their roles over the last 5 years. And even if you think about the saying that people leave an organization for their manager, not the company, for example, how can you help your managers and your leaders be people leaders? And I think with the rise of the new skills over the years, we've seen a lot of people being promoted because they're good at their jobs, but they're not necessarily people leaders. And I think it's really important to start identifying people leaders within your organization. So what can you do to influence this? Culture isn't created overnight, but it's shaped every day. And I think if leaders really want to see a change in culture, they, as I'm talking about managers, but leaders have to be the first ones to embody the espoused culture. You have to change the way people work with each other and interact. And this is reflected in both the macro and the micro moments. So from company-wide meetings and company onboarding to individual manager one-on-ones, all of which are shaped by team dynamics and company values. So again, if I'm talking about quick wins, or where do you start? Celebrate your culture champions, because you've got them in every organization. Culture comes alive when employees see behaviors being modeled and rewarded. And it doesn't have to be a contrived culture. For example, if you want your culture to center on experimentation and new ideas, note I didn't say innovation, but now I've said it. But if you want your culture to center on experimentation and new ideas, your employees have to feel comfortable of trying new things without the fear of failure. That's the biggest reason your employees aren't doing that, if that's what you want them to do. If this approach isn't reflected in how they're evaluated, the freedom to be innovative, or it's not reflected in the leadership actions, there's a complete sense of disconnection for employees. So what can you do? Again, a few things you can do to build a strong culture. Think about things about what you can celebrate. So hopefully this helps you think about little things that all go, if you haven't got a proper, I say proper, that's a really bad expression, if you haven't got a formal culture, but the things like how can you train your employees on your value propositions and help them bring it alive? Celebrate and promote diversity, equality and inclusion events. Ask your employees for input on the culture, because actually a culture may be different between different teams as well, which is okay done properly. Give kudos on internal on channels for employees that deserve it. And really highlight things like and encourage use of company benefits or leave, for example. Again, we can share some examples of what they look like across these different touch points. Again, for the purpose of today, this is an external content, but you should be able to say exactly the same things to internal talent across your internal platforms, your current employees. You cannot go out to market with any of this if it's not lived and breathed and believed internally. And you can go beyond content to try and retain your employees. Things about events, swag, LinkedIn kudos, like it or love it. I'd love to show you, for example, things about volunteering. Your people will be, even if you haven't got a formal program, will probably be involved in some kind of volunteering. We have a great example here from Telstra. I think, Chelsea, if we can show that, have I got the right one on here? Or actually, let's use the HelloFresh one, because we talked about innovation and experimentation. I'm really talking about what that means to them internally. Thank you so much, Chelsea. But talking of recognition, why is it important to focus on recognizing and celebrating your employees? Like, I talked about things like LinkedIn Kudos, like it or love it. It's still there. People like to be recognized for what they are doing. And I'm not talking about the day-to-day job, but so many people now, good talent goes over and above. And it's really important to regularly recognize your top performers and key contributors. With 76% of employees who feel recognized by their employers saying that they love their jobs because they feel valued. And then you've got 32% of employees that leave their jobs because actually they're unsatisfied with their recognition for their contribution. So they're feeling undervalued, and recognition can overcome that. Multiple studies have shown that employees' productivity increase when they are recognized for their work and receive regular feedback. Simple thing to do. For example, 69% of employees would work harder if they felt their effort was better appreciated. So we've internally at Martech, we've set up internal systems. So now we have tacos. I sent a taco yesterday to CMO who helped me brainstorming something. I've been trying to do something in my own head. I work remotely most of the time and I just couldn't do it. And he just literally took an hour out of his time to help brainstorm with me. And it's really lighthearted, but I sent him some tacos to say thank you. So what can you do to sort of influence recognition, regardless of your role? We can say that 33% of employees say that CEO executive feedback is the best. It gives them a high. 4 in 5 of employees we surveyed agreed that recognition impacts their engagement. And then when asked if getting more frequent recognition would make employees less likely to leave, a whopping 71% of employees said yes. And peer support is lacking as well. Encourage or foster a culture of peer support and recognition. Whilst 37% of men get daily recognition from peers, only 26% of women could say the same. And we know that D&I is so important on a lot of these agendas and for attention. So that's something to think about as well. So if you think about the potential journey for recognition, it can also be a celebration, and it's a public acknowledgement of something that is important to them, not just the organizational side of recognition. So thinking about if somebody's going on parental leave, for example, or if they've had an internal move and relocated, if they're getting married, think about all of these different things. That's not just about doing a good job. As we live in a world where there's blurred lines between work and home. And I mean, as I said, I work remotely, and I'm sure many of you do. Just recognizing, I love this one, recognizing working parent success. For those of you who are in Australia, my son goes back to school tomorrow. It's been 7 long weeks. I would love the team to say, thank you, Elle, you're still alive. You've done a great job the last 7 weeks juggling vacation, for example. I'm being lighthearted, but it goes a long way. So some examples of what that looked like can be things like celebrating projects to mapping out careers paths. And we've got a really good example from Coles here around what celebrating success might look like. If we can share that super quickly, please, Chelsea. So I think it's telling a story of the hard work somebody did on a project. There was a lot of hard work that went into this project, and the Coles took the time out to actually celebrate and thank the people involved in that project and get their view on it. Super easy to do. One key strategy that I feel is really overlooked, and coming from a few tech companies where it is really prevalent, is mentorship and career pathing. And I'm going to dive straight into some of the stats here, because I believe that mentorship is such an easy win within an organization looking to retain top talent or talent at scale. But it's so important, although it's easy. So, beyond recognizing, rewarding employees that we've just looked at for milestone achievements, it's equally as important to be nurturing their development on a day-to-day basis. So research shows that 94% of employees say that they would stay at a company longer if it invested in their professional development. And up to a third of employees who intend to quit are leaving for better career progression and upskilling opportunities. Have that conversation. Find somebody within the business from a different career path, for example. People don't actually have to move up. It can be a lateral move. We know this. Find people within the organization from different parts of the department, different functions rather, who can engage and have conversations, those 20-minute coffees, to see if there's more opportunity than what a current employee thinks is available to them. At the 2-year mark, an employee who has made an internal move has 75% likelihood of staying with their company versus 56% chance for someone who's not. And I know we're looking at a lot of skills adjustments, upskilling, etc. Even if you can't do that, but can provide mentorship and think about somebody moving from sales to marketing to field to different functions, depending on your organization, cannot stress how valuable mentorship is. A 2023 study by McKinsey highlights that a focus on employee development helps companies gain an edge in potentially a looming recession, which, the elephant in the room. And they do this by creating opportunities for employees to keep learning and reinventing themselves, and by making promotions, internal transfers readily available. And additionally, they promote a company or a culture, and we're talking about culture as well as retention, of entrepreneurship. It's one of my, not easy to say, but again, one of my sort of favorite, new phrases of the last couple of years, where employees can collaborate and share expertise and ideas across functions. When we talk about hiring diverse talent, it's because we want new ways of thinking. Entrepreneurship is around that diversity of thought that you already have in your organization, so that's sharing and learning. So what can you do to influence mentoring or career pathing? Assign mentors to help guide and nurture employees, especially the new ones, as employees in the mentoring programs are 49% less likely to resign. And this applies to whether they are the mentor or the mentee, because it gives them a sense of value. The practice of pairing junior workers with more experienced senior leaders also has the added benefit of helping leaders to better understand younger employees and helps create a culture that's inclusive and nurturing for everyone. Drive a sense of purpose. Purpose, again, for those of you who know, it's something that's super dear to my heart, by intentionally creating career paths by doing this. Because it's been shown that 70% of employees reported getting their sense of purpose from work. And you know what happens when we lose our sense of purpose? I don't need to tell you, we lose productivity and motivation. So formally and informally invest in employee skills. Professional development is a continuous process. Different stages, different outcomes, different stages in the career, where people get to develop their skills through on-the-job experiences and exposure, and interactions in the workplace facilitated by coaching, sessioning, or mentoring, feedback, or collaboration. And I'm just going to remind you of this stat, which I'm sure you know, that only 10% of the learning is a result of formal training, e-learning, or coursework. And also learning and development opportunities that are tailored to each employee's unique potential and skills, rather than being connected to their job roles, have a direct impact on employee engagement and productivity, and so retention. So I promised at the beginning, I know there was a lot of stats here, but we're going to share this with you. So what are some of the things when you look at career pathing that you can then celebrate? Small but mighty. Don't have to boil the ocean. Don't have to change entire initiatives and programs. some of those key moments that all contribute to the career journey, whether a promotion or a lateral move. And I think this is especially important in our skills-based world of shortages and new skills, etc. You want to keep the skills you need and encourage a skills learning environment, whether professional, technical, or industrial, internal or external. You also don't know what your employees might be studying outside of your organization that could be applicable to them internally. They might be sharing new skill to get a new role that you may be wanting to look at internally. I know I'm stating the obvious, just reminding you. So thinking about some of these career pathing things that you can celebrate, whether it's mentorships or promotions, internal mobility, or completing new courses, etc. Again, think about celebrating them and then sharing the stories. So career pathing can be at any level, from somebody junior who just started a new job and then moved into a new role, like grad, for example, to your exec team. And I'm just going to share quickly this example from Siemens, sharing a really strong internal mobility story. I love this one. Again, we'll send out a link to this, but talking about his journey through Siemens, starting and working his way through the top, different career paths that led him to becoming the CEO. So these are all super tangible examples of initiatives and things you can practice within your organization to positively impact retention. So one, we want to look for stability in their roles with career pathing, mentoring, regular career communication, etc. Again, we cannot overlook, and it's super important to focus on developing a supportive and nurturing culture through health and well-being initiatives. And I think those of you that come from potentially tech organization, larger tech organizations will understand this. I miss the days of wearing my leisure wear to work and going to the gym in the office. I mean, that was both pre-COVID and pre-kid, obviously. But anyway, you know what I mean. But it's not just about physical health as well. Okay, obviously it's mental health as well. So if we look to the US, because we have data available that tells us over half of American workers experiencing at least moderate levels of stress and burnout, and 71% of employees reporting that it's difficult to concentrate on work since 2020. It's easy to see why 75% of employees and 89% of C-suite executives reported that improving their well-being is top priority in 2023. And this is where I note the shift from perhaps physical well-being, like gym subsidies or on-site gyms, super important, to that focus on mental health as well now. So thinking about what you can do again to influence employee health and well-being. Support your managers to be flexible where possible with things such as work-life balance or remote hybrid work. And I pause here because I understand that one size doesn't fit all. One of the key things I see amongst our community and organizations is that they might have a remote hybrid work plan in place, for example, or they might talk about work-life balance. But we used to call, I spent over a year helping organizations build flexibility frameworks. And we used to call it the leader lotto, because this can only be executed if all your people leaders are on board and engaged. Nothing worse than having a team that has great like remote hybrid work initiatives in place or work-life balance, and a leader says, hey guys, you've had a hard week, go home, etc. And then you've got another team where that's just not present. So avoid leader lotto, help your leaders or managers be people managers, and make sure this is embedded throughout the business. And you may not be able to influence, but talk to the people that do. Support your employees' mental and physical health and have things like ERG groups. Encourage conversations. It may be circles, mental circles, women's circles, whatever that is, where people feel safe to talk. Because a MetLife's employee benefits trends study found that more than 52% of employees responded that health and wellness initiatives, like gym memberships, for example, are essential. So that was the physical side, but then the majority of employees recognized the importance of mental health coverage, with 4 out of 5 agreeing that it's important as, if not more important than, physical health coverage. But despite this, only 61% of employees have access to mental health care as part of their benefits package. So I think those are really tangible initiatives. And yes, you'd have to work with your people teams. But what we're here to do is try and give you these data and stats. Again, you'll get this post-session. But outside of that as well, cultivate and lead by an example of an inclusive and supportive work environment. So you can do things like, when you're looking at well-being and what that potential journey looked like, encourage employees to access the benefits you have throughout their employee journey. Whether that's working flexibly in a way that suits them, to taking leave or engaging in ERGs, as I said before. And we've got some examples of those touch points for you. Some really simple ones are things like taking leave for holidays or having coffee catch-ups with leaders, mental health days. Years ago, when I lived in the UK, we used to have what we call, sorry, thanks, Chelsea, it's when I digress a bit. We used to have what we call duvet days, where it was okay. It's one of those days where you just wake up and you just don't feel great. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then I take my hat off to you. But it was okay to ring up your manager. And you used to win duvet days, by the way, like as a reward. So you start with one and you can get access to it. It's like extra leave. But you could ring up and say, hey, I'm taking a duvet day today. Oh, Australia, that's right for you. In the US, Doona days, duvet days. And it's a way of ringing up to say, hey, I'm not feeling great today, with having to say it, but you just want to stay under the doona or the duvet. So there's just little things you can do to embed within your organization. So then again, when we talk about kind of those content examples or what you want to share internally, you can do things like, for example, Chelsea, if we could show what flexible work means to me from CSL. Because flexibility, again, as I said before, means something different to everybody. So start sharing these stories. Again, we can share the internal examples, but these are often shared through internal channels to promote and share that it's okay to work flexibly and tell your own unique story. So I think got us on time for a change, open up to questions. We've got a lot of this data and content in the content plan. We've got the examples for you. We can share all of these for free after the session. As I said, just hit me up. There is a lot here. I think my takeaway for you guys before I open to questions is, as I said, and I was talking about this post this morning, as an individual or in your own role, unless perhaps you're tasked within retention or here, I think this is a teamwork. So looking at practices, looking at initiatives, looking at people managers, looking at culture, mentorship, all these things. I think there's quick wins in all of these. And then there's working probably as a strategic tiger team to put more strategic initiatives in place. So quick wins, what can you influence now within your role and perhaps bring other people in for? And then what do you actually need to bring a longer term strategy and framework into place for? Chelsea, I'm going to open up to Q&A, if you can bring those into me. Oh, look, do you know what? I'm going to say there's the delightful Kim there. Hi, Kim. We need to catch up, so I get excited when I see anyone here. But has anyone got any questions or examples or for me here? Now, I'm happy to jump back through a couple of these slides if you want to see something again as well. Just let me know. Chelsea? Oh, I'm glad, Roselle. Oh, we haven't caught up yet, have we? Sorry, I feel like I know. There's so many of you in the community. There's people I don't know in the world, or people that don't want to know me too. But I'm so glad you got value out of this. I'm really looking forward to sharing this stuff with you. And honestly, if there's anything you want to just brainstorm, please ping me. I love these kinds of conversations. I think if there aren't any questions, then we might either I answered everything or you're digesting it all. Because then if not, we're perfectly on time, I think. Which is somebody who likes to talk about this, doesn't always happen. All right, Chelsea, maybe we can leave it open for sort of 1 or 2 more minutes. Oh, hold on, there we go. Haha, always a good question. Somebody pinged it. Where do you suggest people start with getting stakeholder buy-in on prioritizing retention? So we're going to send this out afterwards, these decks. And data is queen and king and joker and jack. I would start looking at your organization, start gathering the stats on why retention is so important. I think most organizations know the impact to the P&L of hiring new talent versus retention. So I think, yes, you can state the obvious there, but pull together the data, the stats against it, and also perhaps look at those really key talent segments that are really hard to hire, for example, or are critical to the organization. So 2 things, what's harder to hire and bring in versus retention, and what's the critical talent or skills that you could actually upskill internally and would have a quicker ramp time, for example. So critical skills, hard to hire skills, data, and cost to the P&L. And think outside of the box, so not necessarily HR, TA, and people teams, but think about like business leaders. So your head of technology or head of innovation, or it might be retail hiring, for example. Who is going to have pain if you don't fix or manage or improve retention in the organization? And have that coffee with them and understand what would help them, and then take it back to the business. My recommendation. All right. You're welcome. I'm not sure who asked that. That's one of the persons who pinged you, but you're absolutely welcome. I'm going to say it one more time. Happy New Year to everybody. I really hope this is an amazing year. I hope attrition goes down, retention goes up, unless that's what you're looking at doing. But I hope everyone is healthy, and I hope this is just a great year, like physically and mentally, for everyone. And lovely to see some of our community on the call. And I feel like I do need to connect with people again. So my New Year's resolution, and I can't remember who said it today. I think it was Ali Brown on LinkedIn was talking about hers was connection. Mine's thoughtful. I want to spend 2024 being more thoughtful in how I interact and work, and stop going at pace and speed. So I'll leave that with you and catch up with you soon, hopefully. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been so good connecting with you. And good luck.